Welcome back to Dinar Shift. What we are about to discuss is not merely another update in the long timeline of financial news from Iraq. It is a development of substantial and concrete significance for anyone who has followed the trajectory of the Iraqi dinar, whether as an observer, a scholar, or someone with a direct interest in the currency. The information now circulating demands a close and careful examination. As of a recent and definitive point in time, a new phase appears to have commenced regarding the treatment of the physical currency itself. Specifically, confirmation has emerged that all denominations of the Iraqi dinar are now being accepted for exchange through official channels. This acceptance is described as universal, applying without distinction to the various series and denominations that have been issued over the years. This means the higher value notes, such as those valued at 25,000 and 50,000 dinars, are being treated with the same legitimacy as the smaller, more commonplace notes like the 250, 500, and 1,000 dinar bills. For a considerable period, a cloud of uncertainty hung over the status of certain notes, particularly older series or specific denominations, with public discourse often questioning which would remain valid in any future monetary proceedings. This recent development effectively dispels that ambiguity, offering a clear and inclusive policy that leaves no category of officially issued currency behind. The implications of this shift extend far beyond a simple procedural clarification from the banking authorities. When a nation's central bank moves to validate the entirety of its circulating physical currency, it is an action that carries considerable weight within the framework of monetary policy and economic signaling. Such a move is rarely undertaken in isolation and is often interpreted as a foundational step within a broader, more comprehensive strategy of financial reform. For a global audience that has monitored Iraq's economic progress with keen interest, this moment represents a tangible checkpoint, a verifiable action that suggests forward momentum in the country's long-stated goals of monetary restructuring and stability. While this single policy does not, in and of itself, confirm or guarantee any specific future event, such as a change in the currency's external valuation, it is widely understood that actions of this nature are preparatory. They reflect a degree of internal alignment, strategic coordination, and operational readiness that must be in place before more complex financial transformations can be contemplated or executed. Consequently, this development has captured significant attention, reinvigorating analytical discussions and refocusing expert observation on the precise mechanisms and timeline of Iraq's financial trajectory. The confirmations regarding this universal acceptance began to solidify around the latter part of April in the preceding year, emanating from multiple credible channels within the financial sector. Reports indicate that national banks operating within Iraq's borders, along with licensed currency exchange centers, communicated this policy of inclusion. Furthermore, several international financial entities that maintain surveillance on Iraq's economic reforms have corroborated these reports. The scope of this eligibility is particularly noteworthy because it deliberately encompasses both the newer series of banknotes currently in active circulation and the older series that were issued in prior decades. This inclusive approach directly addresses a long-standing point of concern and speculation among international holders of the currency. For years, a narrative persisted suggesting that older notes might be demonetized or excluded from any future process, potentially rendering them worthless pieces of paper. The current policy stands as a direct and authoritative counter to that narrative, systematically dismantling a major source of fear and confusion that has pervaded the dialogue surrounding the Iraqi dinar for a very long time. From the perspective of monetary authorities, a decision of this nature is a deliberate exercise in building public confidence and ensuring systemic consistency. Central banks are deeply aware that perception is a powerful force in economics, and managing that perception is a critical aspect of maintaining financial stability. By validating all circulating notes, Iraq's financial leadership is sending a deliberate message of unity and fairness. It is an effort to consolidate the national currency base, ensuring that every citizen and every holder of the currency, regardless of when or where they acquired it, is acknowledged within the formal financial system. This kind of inclusivity is not an accidental byproduct of policy, but a calculated prerequisite for any meaningful and sustainable monetary reform. A unified currency base where no segment feels marginalized or dispossessed provides a stable platform upon which more complex adjustments can be built. Therefore, this confirmation is far more than a trivial administrative update. It is a key data point, a significant indicator of intent and preparation for anyone conducting a serious analysis of Iraq's economic direction and its potential future steps. The environment that preceded this clarity was, for many years, dominated by speculation and a great deal of misinformation. Online forums, social media channels, and various unofficial sources were filled with conflicting opinions and unverified claims about which series of dinar notes would be honored and which would be considered obsolete. This created a persistent atmosphere of hesitation, where holders of the currency were often left second-guessing their positions and uncertain about the legitimacy of their assets. The lack of clear, official communication allowed these narratives to flourish, leading to confusion and, in some cases, discouragement. The newly announced policy, with its unambiguous language of universal acceptance, serves as a powerful corrective to this prolonged period of uncertainty. By stating that all valid Iraqi dinar notes are eligible for exchange irrespective of their year of issue, their specific design, or their face value, the authorities have introduced a measure of clarity into a domain that was severely lacking it. In global finance, clarity is not merely a convenience, it is an essential component of a functional system, enabling individuals to plan, institutions to prepare, and markets to operate on a basis of information rather than rumor. Restoring confidence in a financial system is a delicate and challenging endeavor, especially when that confidence has been eroded over an extended period. The step taken to validate all currency notes can be seen as a direct investment in rebuilding that essential trust, both among the domestic population within Iraq and the international community observing from abroad. Once lost, confidence is difficult to regain, which makes this move particularly meaningful within the larger narrative of Iraq's MO. Monetary reform journey. It demonstrates a recognition by the country's financial authorities that trust is the bedrock upon which all subsequent reforms must be constructed. Beyond the practical matter of note eligibility, this development communicates a broader, more philosophical message about the priorities of Iraq's financial system as it continues to evolve. The principles of transparency, accessibility, and inclusion are being prominently showcased, indicating a conscious effort to align with the norms of modern, credible financial systems observed in stable economies around the world. For international investors, economic analysts, and global financial institutions, signals of this nature are meticulously scrutinized. They are interpreted as indicators of a country's readiness for deeper integration into the global economic framework and its commitment to operating with predictability and fairness. When a nation ensures that all holders of its currency are treated equitably, it suggests an understanding that broad-based participation and trust are catalysts for economic growth and stability. While intense speculation about a potential revaluation of the dinar continues independently, the psychological impact of this inclusive policy should not be underestimated. It serves to reassure all holders that their assets are recognized and possess legitimacy within the formal system. In the realm of economic reform, shifts in perception and sentiment often act as precursors to tangible policy changes, influencing behavior and market dynamics well before official announcements are made. Therefore, this move fulfills a dual role. It works to stabilize public sentiment among current holders while simultaneously laying a more stable groundwork for any potential future monetary adjustments that may be under consideration. This policy update, therefore, represents a substantive shift that transcends routine administrative housekeeping. It reflects an evolution in Iraq's economic strategy and its approach to managing its most fundamental financial instrument, its national currency. For the millions of individuals worldwide who hold the dinar, whether as part of a long-term investment strategy or for other reasons, the decision embodies a sense of procedural fairness and comprehensive inclusion. A persistent fear among many was that any future monetary reform would be designed in a way that favored certain groups, specific denominations, or individuals with privileged access to information, thereby leaving ordinary holders at a disadvantage. By explicitly confirming that all valid notes are eligible, the Iraqi financial authorities have taken a definitive stance against such exclusionary outcomes. This approach actively works to unify the currency base, reducing fragmentation and creating a more homogeneous financial environment. From a macroeconomic standpoint, such unity is an indispensable condition when preparing for larger-scale reforms, whether those reforms pertain to internal circulation mechanisms, external valuation, or integration with international banking and payment systems. Investor confidence, both domestic and foreign, flourishes most abundantly in environments where the rules of engagement are clear, consistently applied, and perceived as just. This move by Iraq's monetary institutions enhances the country's credibility on the world stage and signals a seriousness of purpose to global observers, including foreign governments, multinational banking corporations, and international economic oversight bodies. While it is crucial to maintain perspective and acknowledge that no single decision can define an entire, multifaceted reform process, this particular action aligns with established best practices observed in other nadi bonds that have successfully navigated complex currency transitions in the past. It suggests a degree of preparation, interagency coordination, and a willingness to confront and resolve long-standing points of public concern directly. This is generally viewed as a positive and constructive pattern of behavior from a central banking authority, indicating a move from a reactive posture to a more proactive and strategic one. Interestingly, alongside this policy of universal acceptance, increased attention is being directed toward the smaller denominations of the Iraqi dinar, such as the 50, 250, and 500 dinar notes. This focus is regarded by many seasoned economic observers as a detail of considerable significance. In economies experiencing prolonged high inflation or instability, these smaller denomination notes often become practically irrelevant for daily commerce, as the prices of basic goods and services soar far beyond their nominal value. They may remain in existence, but cease to have any functional utility, becoming symbolic remnants rather than tools of transaction. Therefore, when these smaller units begin to re-enter the public discourse and receive official emphasis, it naturally raises important questions about the underlying economic planning. A renewed visibility for small denominations can indicate preparation for a more stable pricing environment, where the value of the currency would allow for everyday transactions to be conducted efficiently using these finer monetary units. Analysts who have studied global currency reforms recognize this pattern, as it has appeared in other national contexts prior to periods of redenomination or valuation adjustment. While the renewed relevance of small denominations does not by itself confirm an imminent revaluation event, it strongly suggests a phase of meticulous logistical planning. A robust and functional currency system must operate smoothly at all levels of the economy, from facilitating large-scale commercial transfers and government finance to enabling the daily purchases of ordinary citizens. The presence, acceptance, and practical utility of smaller denominations are critical for supporting this full spectrum of economic activity. As such, the growing official attention on these notes is viewed by many analysts as a constructive and forward-looking signal. It points to a financial system that is thinking strategically about future functionality, rather than merely reacting to present-day challenges. It implies an anticipation of a day when the currency's purchasing power would make these smaller units practical and necessary for a healthy, diversified economy. This kind of planning is indicative of a central bank that is working to establish the necessary infrastructure for stability, which is a prerequisite for any sustainable economic growth, with the confirmation that all Iraqi dinar notes are now eligible for redemption. The practical emphasis for holders logically shifts from a posture of speculation to one of preparation. Individuals in possession of physical dinar currency are well advised to take proactive organizational steps to ensure they are positioned to act efficiently should the need or opportunity arise. The first and most important step involves a careful inspection of the physical condition of the banknotes. While all valid notes are accepted, those that are severely damaged, torn, or defaced may face complications or additional scrutiny in any formal exchange process. Organizing currency by denomination, creating a clear and detailed inventory of holdings, and maintaining a photographic or scanned record of the notes are prudent measures that introduce order and can provide significant peace of mind. For holders residing outside of Iraq, conducting preliminary research is equally vital. This involves contacting local banks, credit unions, and licensed foreign exchange services to inquire, in a general sense, about their policies regarding the handling of Iraqi dinar transactions. It is important to understand that not all institutions will facilitate such exchanges, but broad policy shifts at the source often encourage wider participation over time. Being thoroughly informed and prepared allows currency holders to respond with calm and efficiency to future developments, rather than with haste and confusion. This kind of preparation should not be misconstrued as a signal of panic or an expectation of immediate action. On the contrary, it reflects a responsible and aware approach to asset management. In financial matters of any kind, a state of readiness often distinguishes those who are able to navigate change effectively from those who are caught unprepared and must scramble to adapt. The developments now unfolding are no longer contained within Iraq's national borders. Their implications are beginning to create ripples across the global financial landscape. International investors, currency market analysts, and economic commentators in major financial centers are paying closer attention, recognizing that Iraq's monetary policy decisions hold relevance for regional stability and, given the country's resource wealth, potential implications for global energy markets and investment flows. As a nation possessing some of the world's largest proven reserves of oil and natural gas, Iraq's journey toward financial stability carries weight that extends far beyond its domestic economy. policy moves that enhance transparency, predictability, and inclusivity naturally attract positive scrutiny and renewed interest from the international community. For individuals holding dinar abroad, this growing global attention reinforces the understanding that they are observing a segment of a much larger and interconnected economic narrative. Comprehensive currency reform is rarely a single isolated event. It is almost always a process that unfolds through a sequence of interconnected policy decisions, official signals, and market reactions. The current moment, therefore, feels less like a definitive conclusion and more like a meaningful transition within that longer process. Whether the subsequent steps involve technical adjustments to valuation, a redenomination of the currency, or further regulatory clarifications, the groundwork being laid appears more structured and intentional than at any point in recent years. Being positioned as an observer or participant during such a phase places one at a fascinating intersection of policy, international perception, and future possibility. When examining the broader picture, the universal acceptance of all dinar denominations may represent the initial, carefully placed piece in a sequenced strategy aimed at broader monetary reform. The smaller denominations, such as the 50, 250, and 500 dinar notes, which were previously seen as impractical in an inflationary environment, would become essential in an economy moving decisively toward price stability and normalized daily commerce. Their functional relevance would increase proportionally as the purchasing power of the currency unit becomes more aligned with the costs of everyday goods and services. Historical precedents from other countries demonstrate that such shifts are not random, they are typically the result of careful planning and staged coordination. Economies preparing for a significant monetary adjustment invariably ensure that their currency structure is capable of supporting transactions at every value level, from the very small to the very large. This comprehensive functionality makes economic transactions smoother, reduces the need for rounding, and decreases reliance on alternative or informal payment methods. Analysts who study these international patterns understand that this kind of structural readiness within a currency system often precedes more visible headline-grabbing changes. While a cautious and measured outlook remains absolutely warranted, dismissing these coordinated signs outright may risk overlooking important contextual clues about the direction and intent of Iraq's financial authorities. The convergence of an inclusive redemption policy, the validation of historically questioned denominations, and the renewed official focus on the practical utility of smaller notes collectively paints a portrait of deliberate preparation. It suggests a movement away from a state of stagnation or reactive crisis management and toward a phase of active strategic foundation building. To maintain absolute clarity, it must be stated that no official declaration has been issued proclaiming the commencement of a revaluation. However, it is equally accurate to note that the fundamental prerequisites and policy foundations for such an event appear stronger, more coherent, and more deliberately assembled than at any point in the recent past. A sense of skepticism is not only natural but healthy, particularly given the long and often frustrating history of unfulfilled predictions and exaggerated claims that have surrounded the Iraqi dinar for years. However, healthy skepticism does not necessitate the outright dismissal of verifiable evidence and official policy actions. The current moment invites closer, more disciplined observation rather than either blind belief or cynical rejection. Each substantive policy decision adds a piece of context to the overall puzzle, and collectively, they begin to shape a narrative of strategic intent. Whether meaningful change unfolds rapidly in the coming months or continues along a gradual multi-year trajectory remains to be seen and is subject to a vast array of geopolitical and economic variables. What matters at this juncture is that the foundational pieces of monetary policy appear to be aligning in a more logical and transparent sequence than before. For those who have maintained a patient, long-term perspective, this period may feel like a form of renewed validation of that patience. For those who are newly directing their attention to this subject, it serves as an invitation to engage in learning, observation, and assessment without preconceived dismissal of the possibility for meaningful economic evolution in Iraq. Ultimately, the impact of this change is not confined to the technicalities of banking procedure. It is profoundly psychological in nature. Financial systems operate not only on numbers and regulations, but also, and perhaps more fundamentally, on trust. By confirming the universal validity of its currency, Iraq's financial authorities are engaging in a direct effort to reinforce trust among all stakeholders: domestic citizens, international holders, and global market observers. Trust is the element that encourages continued participation, fosters patience during periods of transition, and supports long-term engagement with the financial system. It reduces the incidence of fear-driven decisions, such as panic selling or hoarding, which can themselves become sources of instability. In the history of monetary reforms, psychological shifts in public sentiment often precede and indeed pave the way for tangible policy outcomes. When people begin to believe that a system is fair, inclusive, and operating with transparency, they are more willing to engage with it constructively and patiently. This policy of universe. Acceptance actively works to build that essential belief. Whether this restored trust leads directly to a specific event like a revaluation is a separate question, contingent on many other factors. What cannot be disputed is that this policy marks a significant shift in the tone and direction of Iraq's monetary management. For those who follow these developments closely, that shift in tone, from ambiguity to clarity, from potential exclusion to definitive inclusion, is in itself a significant and potentially transformative development. It represents a move toward modern financial governance. With significant developments inevitably comes a period of heightened risk, and the current situation is no exception to this rule. Historical patterns show clearly that whenever a financial topic gains momentum and public attention, fraudulent actors and scam artists quickly mobilize to exploit the situation. Periods characterized by a mix of optimism and lingering uncertainty create an ideal environment for financial exploitation. Individuals who are driven by hope, a fear of missing out, or a sense of urgency can become vulnerable targets for sophisticated schemes. Therefore, exercising heightened vigilance is not merely a suggestion, it is an essential practice for safeguarding one's assets. At this time more than ever, it is critical to rely exclusively on credible, verifiable sources of information. Official communications, and published statements from institutions such as the Central Bank of Iraq, recognized national banks within the country, and internationally licensed exchange authorities should serve as the primary reference points. Extreme caution should be exercised regarding anyone, whether online or in person, who promotes exclusive redemption opportunities, private exchange programs, secret insider timelines, or guaranteed financial outcomes. Legitimate financia. Processes conducted by sovereign nations and reputable institutions do not operate through secrecy, exclusivity, or high-pressure tactics. Schemes that rely on emotional manipulation, often urging immediate action before a so-called window closes, are almost universally fraudulent. Engagement should only occur with fully licensed financial institutions and verified exchange centers that operate transparently within established regulatory frameworks. Personal identification details, banking information, or specifics about currency holdings should never be shared with unknown individuals or unverified online entities. A common and urgent question that arises within the community following this news is regarding the duration of this opportunity. As of now, no officially announced deadline has been set for the redemption of Iraqi dinar notes under this universal policy. The absence of a public deadline provides a degree of reassurance, but it should not be misinterpreted as a guarantee of permanence. Policies related to economic reform, currency management, and monetary restructuring are dynamic and can evolve, sometimes with swift adjustments and without extensive prior public notice. Financial history is replete with examples of windows of opportunity opening under specific conditions and closing just as quietly when those conditions change. The fact that all notes are eligible today does not provide an ironclad assurance that the same conditions will remain in place indefinitely. For this reason, the present phase is best viewed as a window of opportunity, a period defined by clarity, eligibility, and a clear path for preparation. These conditions are valuable precisely because they are not always available simultaneously. This window should be used wisely. It is a time for organization, for assessing one's holdings, for consulting with qualified and independent financial professionals if such guidance is sought, and for maintaining a disciplined focus on official announcements. A balance must be struck. Avoid complacency, which assumes the situation will never change, but also avoid panic-driven decisions made in response to unverified rumors. In financial matters, timing is often a crucial component of outcomes, and informed, patient readiness typically proves far more valuable than impulsive action taken under pressure. The preparations made today, while the policy landscape is clear, create flexibility and optionality for tomorrow, whatever developments may arise. For individuals who are newer to following the Iraqi dinar, or have only recently begun to pay closer attention to developments, a brief contextual recap is beneficial. The Iraqi dinar, abbreviated as IQD, is the official national currency of the Republic of Iraq. Over the past several decades, its value and stability have been profoundly impacted by a series of major events, including prolonged war, international sanctions, changes in political regime, internal instability, and significant economic disruption. These cumulative factors greatly weakened the currency's purchasing power and limited its role and recognition within the global financial system. However, Iraq remains a nation endowed with immense natural resources, most notably possessing some of the world's largest reserves of crude oil and natural gas. This fundamental economic reality leads many observers to conclude that with long-term political stabilization, sustained infrastructure development, and consistent economic reform, the underlying conditions could eventually support a stronger and more stable external valuation for the national currency. The recent decision to accept all dinar notes for redemption without distinction for age or denomination represents the most concrete and verifiable step to date toward achieving transparency and inclusivity within the monetary framework. While this action does not confirm a revaluation, it systematically removes a major and long-standing point of uncertainty that has been a source of anxiety and speculation for years. Understanding this historical and economic background is essential for evaluating current developments with rationality and perspective, rather than through the lens of emotion or unfounded expectation. The implications of this policy shift also resonate deeply within Iraqi society itself, extending far beyond the perspective of foreign currency holders. For many years, ordinary Iraqi citizens have navigated an economic landscape marked by uncertainty, inconsistent monetary policies, and a fragmented trust in financial institutions. Older series of banknotes were sometimes viewed with suspicion, set aside, or hoarded outside the banking system due to confusion over their future validity. By officially recognizing the legitimacy of all valid dinar notes, the financial authorities are taking a direct step to restore reliability and predictability to the everyday currency system. This allows citizens to confidently use their money, access savings that may have been stored in older note formats, and participate more fully and confidently in the domestic economy. As dormant currency re-enters active circulation, it can stimulate domestic spending, provide liquidity for small businesses, and contribute to a more dynamic and resilient economic environment. Simultaneously, clearer and fairer currency rules encourage formal saving and longer-term domestic investment, both of which are critical ingredients for sustainable economic growth and development. Trust in a nation's own currency is a foundational pillar of economic sovereignty and social stability. When people believe their money will retain its legitimacy and utility over time, the entire economy begins to strengthen from within. This process of internal stabilization and confidence building is just as important, if not more so, than any external signal sent to international investors. It creates the domestic conditions necessary for lasting reform. So, what practical steps should be considered next? For holders of Iraqi Dinar, this moment calls for a methodology of preparation. Being proactive in this context does not mean making rushed decisions or acting on speculative rumors. It means undertaking the systematic organizational tasks mentioned earlier, carefully sorting and documenting holdings, researching the policies of legitimate financial and exchange institutions, and committing to staying informed through verified official channels. This is also an appropriate time for honest personal assessment. Individuals should ask themselves about their own objectives and expectations. Are the dinar holdings maintained with a specific long-term expectation in mind? Is there a preparedness to engage with formal redemption channels if personal circumstances or market conditions change? Or is the preference to await further confirmation and clarity before any action? There is no universally correct answer to these questions, only informed personal choices based on individual circumstances and risk tolerance. Wherever one stands on this spectrum, readiness and high-quality information remain the strongest allies. Financial outcomes over the long term are frequently determined not by fleeting luck, but by the quality of one's preparation, the discipline of one's process, and the reliability of one's information sources. Those who take the time now to understand their position clearly, to mitigate potential risks through organization, and to establish reliable channels for ongoing information will be far better equipped to respond with calm and effectiveness to whatever developments emerge in the future. What we are witnessing through this policy announcement is far more significant than a routine administrative bulletin. By officially recognizing all Iraqi dinar notes for redemption, Iraq is actively dismantling confusion, lowering procedural barriers, and sending a coherent signal of systemic readiness. Readiness for deeper reform, for greater economic stability, and for more structured engagement with the international financial community. In the nuanced language of global finance, such signals are critically important. They actively shape market perception, influence investor confidence, and methodically set the stage for future policy actions. They indicate a maturation in monetary management, and within this context, they may also indicate a state of preparedness for future adjustments to the currency's framework. While absolute guarantees do not exist and prudent caution remains the guiding principle, moments of clear policy action like this warrant attentive observation. In any financial environment, the potential benefits of a shifting landscape tend to favor those who maintain awareness, prioritize verified information, and cultivate a state of prepared readiness, as opposed to those who are caught reactively by surprise. As always, the protection of one's assets, reliance on credible sources, and a proactive approach to information gathering are paramount. This development invites reflection on its meaning and potential trajectory. Does this represent a pivotal spark within a longer process, or are substantial additional steps still required before any fundamental change is realized? The dialogue continues, grounded in the facts of the policy itself. We encourage our audience to engage with this information thoughtfully. If this analysis has provided value in understanding a complex development, we invite you to stay connected with Dinar Shift for continued, factual coverage of these important economic topics. Our commitment remains to deliver information with clarity and neutrality. Thank you for your time and attention.